Hi everybody and welcome back to the channel. It's been a while since I've done an update on the Enfield. The last kind of major walk round I did, I don't know if that was last year, was received over 12,000 views, if not more, on YouTube, when I talked about the modifications that I've done on this bike to make it better for the UK and general exploring, adventure riding, Greenland, etc. So this is a update just on since then of further mods and some of the issues that we've had along the way. So we fitted this Acabis front fender just as an extension because we were getting a lot of mud on the headlight. It's trimmed down a little bit at the back because of airflow, so be cautious if you fit one, because I didn't want to strangle obviously the air onto the cylinder head. So it has been cut slightly at the back. So that's the first change. The second change is the headlight. So we fitted this LED Cree headlight, which I must admit is really good. It's really good on the trails, significantly better than the stock headlight. This particular one has two coloured rings. I got it from a company on eBay. I'll put a link in the description. But you can either have the orangey halo or you can have a white, so you can change the colour. But it does give a very, very good spread on the road. The only problem with these, like all LED lights, is when they get a bit mucky, you lose a little bit of illuminance, so just wash it down and we're fine. We've done a modification to the foot as well. So the foot, I put a steel bracket on the foot. You can see there, stop that sinking in the mud. And we have problems obviously with the stock side stand. So when you get off your bike and you have to open the gate, it just sinks in anything that's soft. So the foot gives it, I don't know if you can see that, but like I say, just a little bit of a slightly bigger steel plate on the bottom there gives that a bit more area, so we're not sinking as bad. And the other change on the cockpit is I've got this for £25, solid bracket. I think this comes from India, and that just bolts onto the screen mounts, and basically gives you a really good heads-up display. It's not too tall and it's not too wide. I think it's a perfect fit. So if you did take a tumble, there's enough room on the screen there just to, it's not going to bend as such. And this is the wireless charger. So all I've done is just removed it from the handlebars and placed that up on here. So yeah, that's really good, and that's taken. I've done some quite gnarly trails with this on, and it's very, very stable. So for £25, I don't think you can go wrong. So one of the issues that some people have been experiencing is the airbox level. So the airbox, the air filter, obviously behind this panel, and obviously with a bit of weight on the bike, realistically the water level, you're probably looking at where the back foot pegs are, to be fair, distance wise, which isn't a great deal. So I did look at putting the snorkel on this bike, which goes over the DNA air filter. So I actually made the snorkel and trialled that. So if you went on any expeditions where there was a water crossing and you were concerned about water ingress, then you could fit the snorkel, and 5-minute job to fit the snorkel, carry it in your backpack. The only thing with the snorkel is that it hindered performance somewhat, so that's part of the reason I haven't left it on, and also it looks a bit naff on the back. So yeah, so we've put the stock plate back on. So we've got the stock, just a standard plate, and to be fair, with an experiment we did go through some pretty deep water. And one of the modifications you can do is on the back wheel, so there is a gap between the frame. So there is a gap between the underside and the actual frame there is a gap where water can literally come from the wheel arch and flood all this area. So what you can do is you can fit a plastic plate, and you can see some of it there on the inside, and that just stops any water from the back wheel going into that area. So unless you're doing any prolonged river crossings, I think you'll be absolutely fine as it is standard. But anything where you're in the water for quite a while and there's a risk of deepness, then I think you are at risk of obviously basically getting loads of water in your airbox. So one of the mods that you can do is, if I just come around, so this pipe here is the engine breather airbox, the crankcase breather, and you can see that runs straight out of the crankcase here where my finger is, and that goes up and into the bottom of the airbox. So the problem you've got is the moment you get any water ingress in your airbox, it's not right at the bottom of the airbox is the hose, you've got a little bit of time, but if you did get a big gulp of water, that's just going to run straight down and fill your crankcase full of water. So what you can do is, on the airbox there are two hose inlets. The air exhaust injection for the emission control comes from the top of the airbox, so that gets its feed from the top of the airbox. The crankcase is at the bottom. You could actually swap the two hoses around. I mean, I've deleted the exhaust air injection away, so I've got the air deletion kit fitted, so that's freed up the top hose in the airbox. So I've just simply swapped that breather pipe to the very top of the airbox. So what that effectively means now is that should I get a load of water in there, because the actual air intake of the induction manifold, of the throttle body is quite high, it's up here, you would need, unless you drop your bike, you would need a substantial amount of water to enter there before it would get into the engine. Now obviously water doesn't compress, so any water in your engine, in the combustion chamber, and you're going to bend your rods and catastrophic damage. So my advice is, before you do any water crossings on the Himalayan, I mean they're alright in puddles and green lanes, but when you get to anything that's fast flowing, or there's a risk of you dropping your bike, or you drop your bike, then I would just be cautious. That's where the snorkel potentially could be a saviour if you're on a very long trip. So it is well documented online, so you can, like I say, you can modify the airbox hoses to eliminate that crankcase filling up with water. And there are quite a few owners on Facebook groups which have got photographs of basically looks like milk being drained out of their crankcases. Okay, the other thing we've done as well is we've reinforced the bash plate. So you can see there, so on the bash plate we've just basically put another aluminium skin around it, just to give it a bit more reinforcement, because some of the sump guard brackets were starting to crack underneath from, I think, fatigue, just vibration. So we've just put some more aluminium around there. You can get heavier duty guards, but to be honest, with the engine bars where these are here, obviously you do get the engine bars going to get a good wallop first, before, particularly on the exhaust side as well. So some of the engine guards do come right the way around here. I think that's probably a bit overkill for the bike really. You're not going to be taking any like huge jumps. Maybe something that's a bit more powerful, a bit more heavier maybe, but I think the Himalayan, to be fair, with what I've ridden on this, the bash plate's actually still in reasonably good condition underneath. So that extra skin there just gives it a bit more protection. So after various tests and to-ing and fro-ing, I did discover that we did have some water get in through the open plate on the DNA air filter, and I was just a little bit unhappy with the position of the DNA air filter. In other words, it's just an open intake. So what I've come up with is a short, stubby snorkel that's got a pre-filter on. So on this particular filter, what we have is it's an elbow, an ABS elbow that bolts straight onto the airbox cover. It literally has a gasket, rubber gasket that just goes over the DNA ring. And what we've done is we've put an ABS elbow with a flexi pipe and a pre-filter, a snorkel, a foam ram air filter at the end of the pipe, just so it's not open. And I was actually quite astonished by the by the difference this made, because the bike actually runs really well with it. It's only short. I know you could argue it does look a little bit naff, but if I'm honest, it does actually blend in with the bike. And when you're sat on the bike, it's out of the way. It's getting a good draft of fresh air. So obviously, when I put my hand, down the side around the filter, it's it's getting a good blast of cold air from there. It's a little bit higher, and it has a pre-filter, and it's still a bigger opening than the stock air filter cover. So I'm going to run with this for a while because, like I say, it really is running very well. The engine seems to be smoother. It just seems to prefer a slightly restricted airbox, not too restricted. I think the DNA is probably a bit too much on a stock ECU on its own, if I'm honest. Whereas this just seems to, whether it's because there's a short length of tube and it's acts like a bit like a ram pipe, I don't know. Because at the end of the flexi hose, we have actually put a mushroom in, so it's actually folded over, so it's like a bell mouth, if you like. So yeah, so that's this is the what I'm running right now, and I must admit, the bike feels very, very well with it. On the spark plug front, I did have a NGK Iridium CR9EIX plug fitted, which was in for about 8,000, it's about 7,000 miles. And what I found was it's just started bogging down a little bit. I've just started having an underload. It's just started to get a bit of a misfire. So upon doing some reading, I discovered that we actually, in the UK, we should be running CR8 temperature plugs, not CR9s. So I have put a CR8 in, and it's actually made it go a lot smoother. And if anything, I think it's definitely more suited to the modifications we've done on the engine. So we've got 11,800 miles on the clock now. I did have a mechanical, started having a bit of oil leakage from the drive shaft, output shaft of the on the gearbox there. So we just noticed a little pool of oil, and like I said, I think what had happened is you get a lot of crud behind here. So really, I know some people take these covers off when they're green laning, but if you're doing a lot of muddy riding, take this cover off regularly and clean behind it, because I think what's happened is it's full of obviously it's full of sand and mud, and I think hasn't helped the seals in the on the gearbox. I know Suzuki's, they have like a plastic cover to protect the seal. The Himalayan's not so. So we had a bit of a leak there, and to be fair, it was a really easy job. Sprocket off, obviously back wheel. We just slackened the back wheel, take the sprocket off, put the bike on the centre stand, 2 bolts, took the cover off, popped the seals out, and I bought some new seals for, I think they were about 12 quid. Put that back together again, and it's been okay. So other than that, and the slight misfire we received, she's been running really well, to be fair. No oil loss, so no oil consumption. So the oil consumption is 0 at the moment, which is good. So yes, running very well. These foot pegs are starting to get a little bit bent. I think that's had a couple of knocks as that, so I think we're getting ready for a new foot peg shortly. I might let some slightly wider ones. But yeah, so there we go. So there's the Himi, still getting me out, still exploring, and yeah, thanks for watching.